November 2016, China announces to the world that Myanmar just bought the Y-9, the very first foreign customer for the new Chinese military transport aircraft. Thailand, Venezuela, Kazakhstan, and African nations are next in line, according to Beijing. Chinese state media talks about market dominance. The future of military transport, they claim, is Chinese. 10 years later, February 3, 2026, Singapore. On the stage of Asia's largest defense expo, Brazil's Embraer drops a name nobody expected to hear that day. Uzbekistan, a country sharing a border with China, a country that still flies Soviet-era planes, a country that, by geopolitical logic and Chinese money invested in the region, should definitely be buying Chinese. But Uzbekistan chose Brazil. Think about it. How exactly is Embraer's KC-390 bearing the Shaanxi Y-9 in a market the Chinese had planned to dominate? Welcome to Real Mission. Today, we're going to answer a question Beijing doesn't want anyone to ask. On one side, the Embraer KC-390 Millennium, a twin-jet, Brazilian design delivered to the Brazilian Air Force in 2019. It carries over 57,000 pounds, cruises at 540 miles per hour, operates on short, unpaved runways, and was designed to do everything the legendary American C-130 Hercules does, just faster and with more payload. On the other side, the Shaanxi Y-9, a 4-engine Chinese turboprop that entered service with the Chinese Air Force in 2012. It carries 55,000 pounds, cruises at 410 miles per hour, operates on short runways, and was designed, according to China itself, to do the exact same thing: replace the C-130 in the global market. Look closely at those numbers. Almost identical payload, identical mission, similar size. Both aircraft are, in theory, direct competitors, fighting for the exact same clients, attacking the exact same niche. In theory, because in practice, one of them is tearing up the global market while the other is choking. And the reason isn't found on the spec sheets. It's found in design choices that began decades ago. In an engine, in an American band, in an entire fleet of variants, and in a promise Beijing made back in 2016 that it could never actually keep. Think about it. Do you think Brazil really managed to turn the tables on China in the defense industry? Or am I overstating it? Let me know in the comments. I want to read your take. And if you're enjoying this analysis, drop a like and subscribe to the channel, because the part that will really blow your mind hasn't even started yet. 1957. The Soviet Union launches a new military transport aircraft, the Antonov An-12. Stalin had been dead for 4 years. Yuri Gagarin hadn't even gone to space. The An-12 was a 4-engine turboprop freighter designed to carry troops and equipment for Soviet regional wars. And this is where the story starts to get weird. Mao's communist China was allied with Moscow and bought An-12 planes from the Soviets. But in 1960, the alliance collapsed. The famous Sino-Soviet split. The Russians cut off parts, manuals, and support. China was left alone, with Soviet planes grounded on the runway. The Chinese solution was bold. Engineers dismantled their An-12s, reverse-engineered them piece by piece, and flew the first Chinese copy in 1974. In 1981, this plane entered mass production under the name Y-8. In 1981, when the Y-8 entered production, the An-12 it copied was already 24 years old. China was producing a copy of an aircraft considered obsolete, even by the Soviets themselves. And the Y-9 that China offers the world today, in 2026, it's a modernized version of the Y-8, which is a copy of the An-12, which is a design from 1957. To execute this modernization in 2002, China hired a company to help with the design. Guess which one? Antonov. The exact same Ukrainian firm that designed the original An-12 45 years earlier. China paid the heirs of the Soviet project to modernize the Chinese copy of the Soviet project. The Y-9 flew in 2010 and entered operation with the Chinese Air Force in 2012. Did you know that? That the Chinese military transport plane is essentially a modernized copy of a 1950s Soviet design? Comment below if that surprised you. Now compare that to what was happening in Brazil. While China outsourced the modernization of a 1950s plane to the Ukrainians, Embraer began something radically different. In the mid-2000s, a clean sheet design, no copying, no Soviet heritage, a brand new aircraft, packed with Brazilian commercial technology already proven in regional jets flying worldwide. This plane made its first flight in 2015 and entered service in 2019. It was named the KC-390 Millennium. And the name wasn't chosen by chance. Millennium, an aircraft of the new millennium, while China offered the world an aircraft from the past millennium. In any aircraft, the engine is the most complex and expensive part. A country can copy a fuselage, wings, or landing gear, but an engine reveals a nation's true industrial capability. You can't fake an engine. The KC-390 is powered by two IAEV2500-E5 turbofan engines. This engine belongs to the same family that flies on the Airbus A320 and A321. Probably the most common commercial plane in the world, the very same one that might have taken you on your last international trip. Each engine generates over 31,000 pounds of thrust. IAE brings together Pratt & Whitney, Rolls-Royce, MTU, and Japanese aero engines in a Western multinational consortium. The heart of the KC-390 is one of the most mature aerospace technologies on the planet. And the Y-9? The Y-9 is powered by four turboprop engines called the WJ6C. This engine is manufactured by the Zhuzhou engine factory in China. But the technology inside it isn't Chinese. The WJ6C is derived from the Ivchenko AI-20, and the Ivchenko AI-20 was designed in 1957 in Soviet Ukraine. It's the exact same engine, in its basic architecture, that flew on the original Antonov An-12. When China copied the An-12, they copied the engine too, modifying and renaming it over the years. But the core engineering of the engine is from an era when Stalin had been dead for 4 years. China tried to change this. In 2008, during the final development phase of the Y-9, Shaanxi Aircraft Corporation negotiated with Pratt & Whitney Canada to use modern PW150B engines. The deal was practically done, but in December 2008, the United States government dropped a ban. An American subcontractor was forbidden from exporting the engine's control software to China. No software, no engine. Without an engine, China was forced to revert to the 1957 derived WJ6C. This ban wasn't just a minor detail. It was a watershed moment. Had you ever heard about this 2008 American ban? Comment below. This is exactly the kind of information Chinese propaganda doesn't want anyone to know. When you see a Y-9 flying today in 2026, including the Y-9E export version that China delivered to Namibia in December 2024, you are looking at a plane with engines whose core technology dates back nearly 70 years. The future of Chinese military transport is powered by the past of the Soviet Union, and it was the United States that made sure it stayed that way. Look at the contrast. Brazil's KC-390 flies with modern Western engines, proven on thousands of commercial aircraft. China's Y-9 flies with a version of a 1950s Soviet engine because the Americans vetoed the alternative. This difference isn't just technical, it's geopolitical and industrial, and it shows up every time a potential client makes a decision. The difference between a 1950s turboprop and a 2000s turbofan doesn't just show up on the brochure, it shows up in physics, in every single mile flown. And you can't hide it. The KC-390 cruises at 540 miles per hour. The Y-9 cruises at 410 miles per hour. The Brazilian jet is 32% faster than the Chinese one. Think that's a small difference? It's not. On a 2,500-mile mission, the KC-390 arrives almost 2 hours earlier. In a strategic fleet, that means 6 Brazilian planes deliver what would take 8 Chinese planes in the exact same amount of time. Embraer released a study. 6 KC-390s on 1,550-mile routes can deliver over 1.1 million pounds and 1,000 troops in under 2 days, 40% faster than the American C-130J. Compared to the Y-9, the advantage is even bigger. Let's look at the cargo hold. KC-390, 58.2 by 11.3 by 9.5 feet. Y-9, 53.1 by 10.5 by 7.7 feet. The Brazilian plane is larger in every single dimension. It carries loads that simply do not fit inside the Y-9, including a fully assembled American Black Hawk helicopter and the Austrian Pandur Evo with its weapon station intact. This isn't a minor detail. In 2023, when Austria chose the KC-390 over the European A400M, this was a deciding factor. It was the only aircraft in the 20-ton class that met all the Austrian requirements. And the cockpit? The KC-390 comes with Rockwell Collins Proline Fusion avionics, the same standard found in modern civil aviation, and a fly-by-wire system. Let me explain this quickly. In older planes, when the pilot moves the stick, it physically moves the control surfaces via cables and hydraulics. With fly-by-wire, it doesn't. The pilot gives the command, the computer interprets the intent, and calculates the optimal adjustments. It also prevents dangerous maneuvers, like stalling in an emergency or pushing the airframe past its structural limits. It's the exact same technology used in the Airbus A320, the Boeing 777, and every modern military aircraft. The result: safer missions, less fatigue, and cheaper training. The Y-9 lacks fly-by-wire in most of its variants. It does feature a 6-screen glass cockpit, but runs on previous generation Chinese avionics. For a NATO pilot, flying the KC-390 is like flying a modern Airbus. Flying the Y-9 is like stepping 20 years back. There's one more detail that shows up in every serious comparison between military aircraft: air-to-air refueling. Refueling an aircraft mid-flight is one of the most complex operations. It makes the difference between a regional air force and an air force with global reach. And this is where the KC-390 does something the Y-9 simply cannot do. The KC-390, with refueling gear, is simultaneously a tanker and a receiver. It can give fuel to other aircraft mid-flight and receive it. The Brazilian Air Force demonstrated two KC-390s refueling each other, something basically unheard of for this class. And the equipment is modular. The exact same aircraft that hauls cargo today becomes a tanker tomorrow, then does search and rescue, all on the same airframe. The Y-9 doesn't have this capability. Some variants receive fuel in flight, but no Y-9 functions as a tanker. To refuel fighter jets mid-air, China has to use entirely different aircraft, like the YY-20 or adapted Russian IL-78s. This means a country buying the Y-9 is just buying a freighter. A country buying the KC-390 is buying a freighter, a tanker, a search and rescue aircraft, medical evacuation, and aerial firefighting, all in the same airframe. And this observation leads to one of the most consequential differences. A difference China pitches as an advantage, but which, in practice, becomes a financial trap for any buyer. China prides itself on something that is, on the surface, a massive advantage for the Y-9: the sheer amount of specialized variants. From the same base airframe, China developed at least 9 different versions: airborne early warning, electronic warfare, signals intelligence, maritime patrol, anti-submarine, psychological warfare, and more. All of this sounds impressive, and the initial takeaway is China has more options, therefore the Y-9 offers more. But think about it. What does this actually mean in practice for a country looking to buy? It means each of these variants is a separate fleet, a separate maintenance line, a separate parts inventory, a separate pilot training course. And most importantly, China does not export the specialized variants. The Y-9As delivered to Namibia in December 2024 are just the basic transport version. To get airborne early warning, electronic warfare, or maritime patrol, the client would need to buy entirely different planes, or hope China decides to export those technologies, which isn't in their plans. Now compare that with the Brazilian approach. Embraer built the KC-390 with total modularity. The exact same aircraft, using interchangeable pallets, does cargo transport, troop transport, refueling, search and rescue, medical evacuation, and aerial firefighting. In December 2024, Embraer even announced the C-390 IVR variant, intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance, and maritime patrol, on the exact same airframe. The difference is radical. A country that buys 4 Y-9s is buying 4 freighters. A country that buys 4 KC-390s is buying a multi-mission fleet that covers every critical mission with a single aircraft type. For China, with an unlimited budget and a state-owned industry, having 9 separate fleets makes sense. For any other country in the world, it's a budgetary nightmare. Had you ever thought about this difference? That having 9 variants might look great in marketing, but turns into a massive problem in practice? Let me know in the comments. And there's one more thing that weighs heavily on the buyer's decision. Something China simply refuses to show the world. When you buy a military aircraft worth tens of millions of dollars, you want to know how much time it spends in maintenance, how many missions it completes, what the actual failure rate is. That's what separates promises from reliability. Embraer publishes these numbers. In its first 3.5 years of operation with the Brazilian Air Force, the KC-390 fleet accumulated over 8,200 flight hours across 6,000 missions, boasting an 80% technical availability and a 99.5% mission completion rate. By February 2026, the global fleet reached 20,000 cumulative flight hours. China publishes none of this for the Y-9. No official flight hour data, no availability rates, no mission completion percentages, no public record of incidents, just total silence. That silence is an answer. Either the Chinese aren't measuring it, or they are measuring it and the numbers are so bad they don't want to show them. There is no third option. And for a Ministry of Defense about to spend billions on a transport fleet, no data means no trust. Without trust, there's no sale. And that finally brings us to the question that opened this video. In November 2016, China announced to the world that it had sold its first export Y-9 to Myanmar. Chinese state media talked about conquering the market, a promising future, and client after client getting in line. In February 2026, 10 years after that announcement, here are the real numbers. Before I give you those numbers, let me ask you, how many Y-9s do you think China actually managed to sell abroad in 14 years? Think of a number. Drop it in the comments. I'll wait. Al-Baidi. In 6 years since the first KC-390 delivery to the Brazilian Air Force in 2019, Embraer has sold 50 aircraft in firm orders to 11 different countries: Brazil, Portugal, Hungary, South Korea, Netherlands, Austria, Czech Republic, Sweden, Slovakia, Lithuania, and Uzbekistan. They already have 14 planes delivered and flying across 3 continents. There are 19 additional purchase options. Argentina, Chile, and Colombia signed letters of intent. Poland, India, South Africa, and Saudi Arabia are currently in negotiations. China, in 14 years since the Y-9's first flight in 2010, delivered exactly 2 planes to 1 country, Namibia, in December 2024. There is no confirmed third official client. Thailand, Venezuela, Kazakhstan. The African nations promised in 2016, none of them bought it. 52. This is the real scoreboard of the clash between Brazil and China in the 21st century military transport aircraft market. China had a 7-year operational head start. It has a defense budget 10 times larger. It has a diplomatic apparatus on every continent. And even so, it is delivering 25 times fewer aircraft than Brazil. Think about it. In what other heavy industry sector does Brazil beat China today? Almost none. But in heavy military transport, this is the story. And it's a story Chinese propaganda simply cannot cover up. Did you have any idea about this massive gap before this video? Comment below. I want to read your take. Drop a like if this analysis is blowing your mind. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Because the most symbolic part of this video is coming right up. In December 2023, South Korea chose the Brazilian KC-390 over the American C-130J and the European A400M. It was a rare case of an established Hercules operator choosing a direct competitor. A close US ally in the Pacific, with 4 C-130Js and 12 older Hercules in its fleet, decided to trade American continuity for the Brazilian jet. It was the first KC-390 sale to Asia, in a region where Lockheed Martin had dominated for decades. Now, an important caveat. Someone might argue, and rightly so, that South Korea wouldn't buy the Y-9 even if it were the best plane in the world. Korea is a US ally. China is a potential adversary, and buying a Chinese jet would mean having their fleet grounded on day 1 of any tension. That argument is entirely valid. The Korean victory is, first and foremost, a win for the KC-390 against Western competitors, not against China. But the Brazilian victory that delivers the final blow to the Chinese military transport industry is the exact opposite. It's a victory in a market where the Y-9 was the natural bet, where China had geographical proximity, political weight, invested money, and decades of built relationships. And even then, Brazil won. Remember Uzbekistan from the beginning of this video? February 3rd, 2026. On the stage of the Singapore Airshow, Embraer reveals that Uzbekistan is the 11th customer for the KC-390, a country that shares a land border with China, a country that still flies the Antonov An-12, the very same Soviet plane that spawned the Chinese Y-9, a country that received billions in Chinese investment through the Belt and Road Initiative. This is the kind of market that the Chinese defense industry paints as a guaranteed victory. Favorable geography, aligned operational history, consolidated political influence, Chinese money flowing through the region. On paper, it should lead to a natural purchase of the Y-9. And yet, Uzbekistan chose Brazil to replace its Soviet planes. Why? Because Uzbekistan looked at the KC-390 and saw what the rest of the world saw: a 21st century aircraft, fully modular, an air-to-air refueler, operable by pilots with commercial training, powered by mature Western engines, boasting a 99.5% mission completion rate, backed by 11 nations as a mutual support base. And they looked at the Y-9 and saw what Myanmar saw, what Namibia saw, what everyone saw: an aircraft derived from a 1957 Soviet design, engine tech blocked by the United States, no fly-by-wire, no mid-air refueling, no exportable variants, zero public reliability data. The choice was obvious. When even countries that have every reason to buy Chinese choose Brazil instead, the verdict is in. This is the real state of the clash between Brazil and China in heavy military transport in 2026. It is not a fair fight. It is an aircraft of the new millennium defeating an aircraft of the past millennium in market after market. That 50-2 score speaks louder than any propaganda. And this is just the beginning. Argentina, Chile, and Colombia with letters of intent. Poland in active demonstrations. India tendering for 70 to 80 planes. Negotiations with Northrop Grumman to enter the US Pentagon. Brazil went from almost nothing to a global industry protagonist in a single decade. Meanwhile, China is still waiting for the third Y-9 customer. For 10 years now. I'm Rodrigo. This was Real Mission Military. Comment below which data point impressed you most. Share this video with someone who needs to understand what Embraer is doing for Brazil. And I'll see you on the next mission.